Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Dov Ben Shimon, and I am the CEO of our Jewish Federation of Greater Metro West. Our support for Israel is unwavering, both in times of quiet and during the tensions of the last week. This is a very difficult time for so many of our families and friends, but our Jewish Federation of Greater Metro West has always stood with Israel. Yesterday afternoon, our executive committee held an emergency session to allocate an additional $100,000 of funding for our partners on the ground, for trauma support, for helping vulnerable and disabled Israelis stay safe, for counseling, for support for rescue workers, and for the Victims of Terror Fund. That's above and beyond the millions of dollars that we allocate through our annual United Jewish Appeal to care for those in need, to build community, and to save lives in Israel and here at home and around the world. I'm so deeply proud of our donors and supporters whose generosity allows us to turn on a dime and quickly make a difference. I'm grateful for our Federation President, David Saginaw, who's joining us today while driving, keeping his eyes on the road, I hope. And it's now my honor this morning to introduce Israel Nitzan, the Acting Consul General at the Consulate General of Israel, New York, to share a few words with our community. Thank you, Israel, for joining us.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dov, for and all our friends, the Jewish Federation of Greater Metro West, for organizing this virtual rally, for your support, this solidarity. This expression of solidarity is so important to us, especially usually, but also particularly right now, as Israel is currently experiencing a wave of terrorism with more than 2,000 rockets that have been shot at our communities by terrorists, by Hamas terrorists from the Gaza Strip. Thousands, many more thousands of rockets are actually aimed at our communities as we speak. And we simply cannot accept a situation, a reality in which our people, our sisters and brothers in Israel are being threatened by a terrorist organization in such a way. You know, Hamas is a murderous terrorist organization that is responsible for the death and injury of thousands of not only Israelis, but also Palestinian civilians. Today, we have more than 1 million Israelis, actually, Israeli civilians who are currently under the threat of rocket fire. We have, in the last 4 days, we've had already 8 Israeli civilians, including a 5-year-old child who were killed in direct hit by Hamas rockets. We have 1 Indian national who was also killed right at the beginning of the events, and 1 IDF officer who was killed by an anti-tank missile that was shot at him, a Kornet anti-tank missile that was provided to Hamas by Iran. As I said, we cannot accept a situation in which we have 1 million Israelis who are currently under the threat of such a threat posed by Hamas. You know, I'm providing you with the information and the details about, but we need to say that I think that we all need to understand what the citizens of Israel are facing, Jews and non-Jews alike. You know, Hamas spews hate towards Israel and the Jewish and Jews around the world, but their missiles show no prejudice. In the last 4 days, an Arab-Israeli father and daughter, Khalil and Nadine Awad, may their memory be a blessing, were killed by a rocket fire fired from Gaza that hit their house in Lod. Additionally, I mentioned an Indian citizen, Sumaya Santosh, was killed during an attack, a direct hit at her apartment in Ashkelon. Our last victim was actually a 6-year-old child, Ido Avigal, who suffered a direct hit of a rocket that struck his house. Israel has the right, but even more than the right, Israel has the obligation to protect its civilians, and we launched a military operation against Hamas military targets. I emphasize the operation is against military targets of Hamas in the Gaza Strip, with the goal of weakening and Hamas as basically pushing Hamas to a situation in which they lack the military capabilities to attack Israel. So the IDF is targeting against, again, military targets, the rocket manufacturing facilities, their headquarters, and their weapon depots in order to remove this threat from Israel. I need to say that Hamas is actually committing a double war crime by indiscriminately firing at our civilians, at the Israeli civilian population from within the Palestinian civilian population. But I have to say that Hamas is also putting the lives of Palestinians in danger when 1/3 of the rockets, several hundreds of the rockets that were fired from the Gaza Strip failed to cross the fence and actually landed inside Gaza. And we know that leading to confirmed death of Palestinians. So Hamas is actually putting not only the lives of Israelis, but actually the lives of Palestinians at great risk. The full responsibility for this deterioration and for those harmed on both sides fall entirely on Hamas and the terrorist organizations shooting rockets recklessly to the state of Israel. And I have to say one more thing, also the reckless incitement of the past several weeks leading to this cycle of violence is the full responsibility of Hamas. I'll say two more things that are important, especially here in the United States. First of all, Iron Dome is doing a phenomenal work in actually intercepting a very, very, very high percentage of the rockets. Very few actually land in civilian communities, and unfortunately, those who actually hit the civilian communities lead also to casualties. You know, Iron Dome is not only saving Israeli lives, but it also allows the IDF, by minimizing civilian casualties on the Israeli side, it allows Israel to delay any potential escalation to a wider military confrontation. While Hamas is behaving recklessly in a very aggressive way, Israel is trying to contain this conflict and to keep it in a way, and to keep this conflict in a much less wide scale than what Hamas would like to have. We thank, of course, the US Congress for their support with this important project, the Iron Dome, and we thank the US Congress, we thank the US administration for this. You know, Israel will take any action necessary to protect its civilians. It is our right, it is our obligation. And we need to say, we need to be very clear, Israel has the right to defend itself, and we also need moral clarity. One thing that I'm reading statements and hearing things that are being said, we need moral clarity. This is an asymmetric war between a sovereign state with the right, following the international law, with the right to defend its civilians, and a terror organization that targets civilians indiscriminately, using Palestinian civilians as human shields. There is no moral equivalent whatsoever between what Israel is doing and what Hamas is doing. And we call on our friends in the United States and here in New Jersey to go public. We want them to go public to unequivocally condemn the Palestinians for shooting rockets at our civilians, to condemn Hamas for its responsibility for targeting Israeli civilians, committing a double war crime. We need our friends to recognize our right to protect our civilians. But I think that this is also another opportunity to address another problem that actually has led to this round of violence, which is Palestinian incitement to violence. Hamas has actually incited for weeks to violence and terrorism, leading all the way to Monday, May 10th, that was the trigger basically for this latest round of very aggressive violence from the Gaza Strip. I want to thank you again for organizing it. I want to wish you all a Shabbat Shalom and Chag Shavuot Sameach. And thank you so much for your support and friendship. And we know that we can trust you. Thank you so much again.
Thank you, Israel. We're grateful for you and the consulate, and we want you to hear the message of support from our community. It's now my honor to introduce two members of Congress who have been strong supporters of our Greater Metro West community and the US-Israel relationship. Representatives Mikey Sherrill and Tom Malinowski. Thank you both of you for making time to be with us this morning. We're going to ask Representative Sherrill to speak first, followed by Representative Malinowski. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dov. Thank you, Linda, for inviting me to join this morning for this critical update about the situation on the ground, which I know is evolving quickly. It's really an honor to be here with the Consul General and my colleague, Congressman Malinowski. I see many familiar faces. It's been a really trying week for everyone. In fact, throughout the week, we've been closely monitoring the situation. On Wednesday, I was with our special forces here in the United States who are in close contact with the Israeli special forces. And in fact, one of the leaders had just missed part of the meeting because he had just been working on some concerns with what was going on in Israel. I'm so sorry for all of the families, for people who've lost their, family members. I'm sorry we have so many people in my district who are spending sleepless nights praying to ensure your loved ones are safe and protected. And certainly, I think everyone is especially devastated over the loss of lives of children. I've traveled to Israel. I've personally met with families who are now in grave danger. Michal, I see you in the Zoom. I can only imagine how difficult this is for you, having been to Kibbutz Erez and talking to you about your previous experiences. With that said, these indiscriminate rocket attacks being perpetuated by Hamas are terrorist acts. Israel does have the right to defend itself. And the crucial thing now is that the escalation of violence stops so that we can hopefully work towards peace and taking care of our community members and their families. Everything possible is being done to bring a resolution. I think the Israeli government has the responsibility to do that. It has the ability to influence the pace of how quickly this accelerates or slows. And I think the United States certainly has a critical role to play in supporting that effort. I was very happy to see that President Biden reached out to Prime Minister Netanyahu. They evidently spoke for quite a long time. I know Secretary Blinken has been working on critically needed diplomacy, including sending an envoy. I'm monitoring the situation. We've been in touch with the White House to discuss our ongoing concerns with what is happening and my feeling that the United States has to be a key partner to this, our most important strategic ally in the region. So I just want to say once again, I'm so sorry for the pain and suffering. And I'll join all of you in praying that we can de-escalate this and come to a peaceful resolution. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Sherrill. We know that Congressman Malinowski is having trouble logging in. We're going to get back to him in a moment. And in the meantime, I'm passing this over to my colleague, Amit Stern.
Thank you, Dov. Thank you, Congressman Sherrill. So many people ask me, my name is Amit Stern, I'm the community shaliach here in Federation. Many people ask me, what happened this time? How did it start? Why everything started? And as you probably all know, we experience many rounds of fighting every couple of months or every couple of years. And this one is not different than any others. Hamas decided to escalate the situation for a couple of reasons. Most of them are internally. There's a powerful tension between Hamas and the PLO around elections in the Palestinian authorities. And Hamas looked for a reason, something that he can escalate it and get his power around the West Bank as well. He used the tension that we had around Sheikh Jarrah and the Supreme Court decision that was about to come any day and now delayed. It used the tension around Ramadan and around Jerusalem and Temple Mount, where a lot of riots happened. And he used social media, which is something we see more and more. I know most of the people here don't use TikTok, but the social media and the TikTok network in Israel is full of messages, full of Arab young and teens who's rioting and hurting in the last month and a half Jews around Jerusalem, increasing the tension, and Hamas sending the messages to all Arabs in Israel and in the Palestinian authorities. And using all of those, Hamas saw that the Israeli government and the police is trying to declutter the tension that we have in Temple Mount, and went there. Hamas set up time limit saying until 6 p.m. 3 days ago, if the Israeli police doesn't go out of Al-Aqsa Mosque, they'll shoot rockets, and they started by shooting already to Jerusalem, escalating it very fast, shooting rockets into Tel Aviv and into center of Israel, putting at risk more than 1 million Israeli civilians all around. Now we experience the same social media here, and the anti-Semites that raising their head with criticism about Israel, some of it maybe legitimately, but mostly attacking the Jewish state and the mere fact of Israel as a state. I'm sure a lot of your kids or grandkids hear it in colleges and here. In a week, in May 23rd, we're going to have a program, I lead, in Federation, explaining a bit more about it. You can see in the chat and register for it as well. But I know you also came here to hear a bit more about the situation now in Israel. And luckily we have with us our colleagues, Michal and Amir from Israel to share with us. If you have any questions, please use the chat and write it to me directly. After Michal and Amir, we'll have a session of Q&A.
Amit, I'm going to stop you for 1 second because we're honored to have with us Congressman Malinowski. I hope we have you with us, Congressman.
Yes. Hey, Doug.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, everybody. Sorry about that. I was hoping to get on from the beautiful steps of the beautiful Capitol building on this lovely in Washington day, but this wasn't working on my phone. You'd think after a year we would have this down. But anyway, it's really good to spend a few moments with you guys on this very, very somber day. And I know, and I want to just first of all acknowledge that many folks in this community and folks who are connected to Israel and to the territories living all around the world are anxious right now about their friends and their loved ones, with good reason. And I guess that's a reminder, as if we needed another reminder of the human cost of this terrible conflict and the need to resolve it. So I'll just offer a few words, and I'm happy to stay on with you guys if you like, and hear your thoughts as well. This was another manifestation of something that we've seen happen again and again and again over the years. We had a Palestinian protest movement over a very complicated set of issues in Jerusalem, which was, as usual, hijacked and militarized by Hamas in a way that is utterly destructive to everybody and to everything. I've said a couple of times this week what needs to be said with absolute clarity by everybody, and that is that when Hamas fires these rockets, which are inherently indiscriminate at populated areas, that is absolutely an act of terrorism. It's something that is designed to terrorize and to kill innocent people, civilians. Those rockets, of course, don't discriminate based on whether you're Jewish or Arab. They are just designed to kill, and there is no grievance, no matter what you think about the politics of the situation. There's no grievance that justifies it. And so it's another reminder of how important it is for the United States to do everything in our power to support the security of all the people who live in the state of Israel by continuing the very life-saving assistance that we provide. And we've seen again how systems like Iron Dome make all the difference between life and death for the civilians who are caught in the middle of this conflict. Now, all that said, I do very strongly believe in and hope that we will see a de-escalation, and I have urged the Biden administration to elevate and escalate its diplomacy to that end. You know, they were talking about sending out a really fine diplomat out there, but somebody who's sort of a mid-level person. I don't think the Biden administration kind of had this on its schedule for the first few months. We don't have an ambassador in Israel. This really does have to be elevated, and I expect them to take a leadership role, working with the regional states that have a stake in this, that have influence with one or both sides, whether it's the Abraham Accords countries or Qatar or Turkey or Egypt, to try to find a way to de-escalate. Israel has an absolute right here to strike back in a targeted and proportional way against those who are firing the rockets, but I don't think it's in Israel's interest or anybody's interest for this to become another all-out war. That's just something that will create suffering among civilians on both sides. So we need that kind of diplomacy right now, and I believe we're starting to see it from the Biden administration and from other countries. And then finally, I think the crisis reminds us of something else that is very, very sensitive and very painful, but very important to recognize, and that is that I'm a strong supporter of a two-state solution and will continue to work towards it. But the reality is that we're nowhere near to a two-state solution. We're not going to have a two-state solution this year or next year. And I think more attention, therefore, needs to be paid to how people live in the current state. The current state, from a sovereignty standpoint, but the current state of affairs in a more general sense, including how Palestinians live inside, Palestinian Arab citizens of Israel live, and whether they receive equal protection of the laws. And even Prime Minister Netanyahu, I think, has spoken to that in the last couple of days in terms that are much starker than I've ever heard him use. And what can be done to improve governance and respect for the basic dignity of everybody who lives in the West Bank. This is not a situation, I think, where these decisions can continue to be put off year after year after year, and simply saying we support a two-state solution, it suffices to end the conversation. And I know how complicated all these questions are, and I do not have the magic answer that others have not been able to come up with. But I just don't think we can, as a country, turn our faces away from the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, as I think some people in Washington have been tempted to do, simply because it's so hard and so complicated in recent years. So those are my current thoughts. I put out a couple of statements that I think have been broadly shared, and of course always welcome your feedback and a continued dialogue on this issue. So thank you so much.
Congressman, we're always grateful for you and for your leadership. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Thank you to Congresswoman Cheryl, who I know had to go back for a vote. It's our pleasure right now and our privilege to hear from our own representatives from Greater Metro West on the ground in Israel. We're going to turn to Michal Tzur and then Amir Shaham for updates on the situation live from Israel right now.
Shalom, everyone. I'm very happy to see such big crowd of people supporting Israel and supporting what we do. My name is Michal. I work for the Greater Metro West Federation in Israel as Global Connections Director. And I moved to Kibbutz Erez, which is right by the border with Gaza, about 5 years ago because of the connection that Metro West has with this small and beautiful kibbutz. And we have great life there. We love our lives there, and we love the connections between the communities. But our life changed a few days ago. Our life turned around. Starting Monday afternoon, we got a message, following fires and the riots in Jerusalem, we got a message that we need to get into our houses, lock the doors, lock the windows, and just wait, because there was an alert of a group of terrorists that crossed the fence and are operating in the area of the kibbutz. And we were waiting in our houses for about 12 hours. These are my kids sitting in the safe room in the mamad. We had dinner there. We had, we were playing games, eating a lot of candies, both them and me, just to keep ourselves energetic. But the fear was real. We had many rounds of escalations over the years, and we already know how to do it and what to do and how to operate and how to run for for the safe room or the shelter. We have about 8 seconds. That's it. If you count from 1 to 8, that's it. To find a safe room. So we know what to do, but this time was just different, starting with this lockdown, which repeat itself a few hours later again. And now I left the kibbutz 2 days ago with the kids to stay with family, to get them to a different atmosphere. And I get the messages from the kibbutz that they had the 3rd lockdown. It's nerve-wracking. You don't know what to do. You don't know how to defend yourself, your kids. You're sitting in a closed house, just waiting for something to happen. And you don't even want to think about the scenario of what if something really happens? How am I supposed to protect myself and my kids? With what? But there are a lot of soldiers. You see here the army. There are tons of forces right now in the kibbutz. This is one of the kindergartens. They use the empty kindergartens because there's no education system operating these days as their place. The intensity of this round is also very different. The number of missiles that were shot towards Israel overall and to our region specifically is huge. Only to Kibbutz Erez, there were about 75 alerts in 3 or 4 days, which is, think again about how often you hear the alarm, and you don't get only your alarm, you get the alarm of the neighbor moshavim and kibbutzim, and you get the Iron Dome interception noise, and you get the mortar shells station that was based right outside of the kibbutz. So you feel like you're in a real war zone in terms of the noise and the sounds and the smoke and it's surreal. I couldn't find the word. I was talking to my colleagues the other day and I couldn't find the words, and then someone wrote me surreal, and that's it. That's, I think, because we just want to live our lives, we want to raise our kids, and there was also different. This round was the use of drones from the Palestinian side. A few of them entered to our area, causing some damages. I think it shows us that it's more sophisticated. They're using different and more advanced weapons. And one of them hit a kindergarten in the nearby kibbutz, a direct hit to the kindergarten. Thank God, kids, like I said before, were not there. But if you remember visiting Kibbutz Erez and seeing the kindergarten with the green metal roof above them, so it penetrated one of these roofs. So it shakes our perception of resilience and security and defense and everything that we thought that was is going to protect us is being challenged this time. So as of now, about 85 families from the kibbutz evacuated themselves to different places in Israel. Amir will talk about the bigger picture in Israel, and you'll see that it's not easy to find a safe and quiet place at the moment. I took my kids. Eitan is 9, Maya is 7. We're now spending the weekend with the family in the Golan Heights, hoping that the Lebanese and Syrians will not join the balagan, the overall fight. And we're pretending like we're on vacation. We're going kayaking and we're going to swim in the Kinneret and trying to keep happy faces. But I can tell you that the kids are not buying the charade. I see how nervous they are, how restless, not eating, not sleeping, and who knows what stays with them for the longer run. I hear a lot about the social media and about what you have to deal with back in the States, whether your kids are in college or this is what you do for a living, or you just want to defend what happens here. And my message to you is put aside all the big words and all the politics and all the big messages. Think about Eitan and Maya and the people that you know personally in Kibbutz Erez, in Ofakim, in Merchavim. They all got alerts. In Arad, the road to Arad was blocked by some riots. Just tell people about the people you know, about the partnership you build. I think this is the best story to tell. We want to live our lives peacefully, quietly. We want to build the country. We want to strengthen the connections with you. And I think that should be that's my message to you. So we're holding on, and we know it's going to end soon, and we believe in what we do and why we live where we live. And we're holding on because of your support. So I thank you very much, and I'm wishing you Shabbat Shalom and Chag Shavuot Sameach, and all my love to everyone in Metro West.
Hi, Shalom everyone. This is Amir. Talking to you from Tel Aviv. Yes, Tel Aviv also in this round was under a few attacks, but nothing to compare to what is going on in the south and Kibbutz Erez area and our other friends in Ofakim and Merchavim and our partners in various communities all along the Gaza perimeter. I myself spent the last few days in Ashkelon, from all places. Ashkelon is now the capital of this round. My parents, who are 88 years old, are living there in an old house with no bomb shelter. After 60 years, they will never evacuate their home. But their medical situation requires me to go there every day. So, under a barrage of rockets, I went down to Ashkelon, stay with them. Hundreds of rockets in the last few days on Ashkelon. Luckily, we are fine, they are fine. But you can imagine how scary and frustrating this situation is for them, for me, and for the entire citizens. But I wanted to share with you something that is even more scary than this. And this is what is going on within Israel internally. The riots, the conflicts, the violence, the hatred, the lynch, almost lynch and wild mob attacking each other between Arabs and Jews, Israelis, citizens of Israel in different cities, especially mixed cities like Lod and Ramla and Yafo and Haifa. Our Arab neighbors, the Israeli citizens, are part of the Israeli mosaic. the delicate posture of the Israeli society is under threat. And this is very, very scary for the long-term health of our Israeli society and even the mere existence of us as a Jewish and democratic state. We will prevail regarding the Hamas on the front of the rockets. As you heard from Michal, we are strong, we are resilient, and we will prevail. They will not win these terror attacks. But what is going on within our country needs to be tackled. This is very dangerous. Our nature of a Jewish and democratic state was declared in the Declaration of Independence exactly, symbolically, exactly 73 years ago, May 14th, Friday afternoon, right here on Rothschild Street, next to my home, exactly 73 years. This is where Ben-Gurion declared the state of Israel and shaped its nature as a Jewish and democratic state with full equality to all its citizens. And we were able to keep this vision for the last 73 years. What we see now is putting in danger our ability to keep it going. And since we are here to stay, Jews and Arabs, nobody's leaving. No one is going to leave this country. We have to put much more efforts in order for us to bring back what we are now losing in these past few days. Our federation is one of the only federations in North America. Jewish Federation of Greater Metro West was one of the first federation to declare that the vision of shared society and cohesive society in Israel is one of our 4 main agenda items. And we have an entire Global Connections pillar that is working in order to promote and enhance shared cohesive society in Israel. We need to continue what we do and double down on that. We need to gather all the leadership from our partnered communities, as well Jews as well as Arabs. We already saw some of these gatherings in order to lower the flames and bring Israel back to what it needs to be, a Jewish and democratic state. And therefore, I really appreciate this solidarity forum that our community put together. And it was very heartwarming to hear the Congress people supporting our efforts. It is very, very important, and we need to do it together, diaspora Jews and Israelis alike, in order to bring Israel and to safeguard Israel and to bring back our vision of a Jewish democratic state. So in this weekend, we are celebrating Shavuot. We are celebrating, Muslims are celebrating the holiday of Eid al-Fitr. And let's hope and let's pray that these holy days will lower the flames and will bring some calm and sanity into our country. I will wish you all Chag Sameach. I will wish Eid Said to our Muslim friends, and Shabbat Shalom, a Shabbat of peace to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Amir. I'm Rebecca Gold, Chair of Federation's Global Connections Department. We hope you found this update informative and helpful. We hope and pray for a speedy de-escalation of tension and violence, and will continue to monitor the situation with our global partners. We are so grateful to Israel Nitzan, Acting Consul General at the Consulate General of Israel in New York, Representative Mikey Sherrill, and Representative Tom Malinowski for their time, their support, and such kind words. Thank you to Michal Zur, Amir Shacham, and Amit Stern for presenting us with the realities of the situation in Israel, and for being our eyes and ears on the ground for our partnership communities. They are carefully monitoring what is happening and evaluating ways that we can help meet the needs as they arise. Along with your hopes and prayers, your continued and unwavering support through our UJA annual campaign has been critical, and it has allowed us to grant an immediate additional $100,000 in response to Operation Guardians of the Walls, while we navigate this latest situation and pull together towards recovery in the days ahead. Your donation to our annual campaign will help support our partnership communities, including Kibbutz Erez, located just 5 miles from the Gaza border. It also helps our partners who respond on the ground, bring vital physical and psychological support to victims of terror, move those with disabilities or restrictions away from missile-hit areas, support at-risk populations, and much, much more. This is above and beyond the millions of dollars we allocate through our annual campaign to care for those in need, to build community and save lives in Israel, here at home, and around the world. You see here on the slide and in the chat how to make the donation today, either through our website or via text. Thank you in advance for your critical and unwavering support. Please continue to check our site regularly, where we will have compiled background information and links for up-to-date news sites that will keep you well informed. This link is also here in the chat. We cannot thank you enough. We wish everyone a peaceful Shabbat and a quiet Chag Shavuot, both in Israel and in our greater Metro West community and around the world. Stay safe, stay healthy. We look forward to being together in better times. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.